So I just got back from the theater, or as those of you in jolly old England say, the cinema. And this is the first time I've really ever thought to use the word cinema in an unironic sense. You recall, maybe, Martin Scorsese talking about how superhero movies weren't cinema. So the word gets thrown around a lot, but when I think of the word cinema, I think of the word cinematic. And what do we think of when we think of cinematic? We think of cinematography. And when we think of cinematography, we think scale. We think grand vistas. We think epic scope. That's what I think of when I hear the word cinema. The word cinema ought to imply there's a story with some gravitas. There's some weight to it. There's some heft to it. And in that case, I would never dare to suggest something like Avengers Endgame is any less than cinema, because there are emotional stakes built up over time that are paid off in that film. So when I use the word cinema to describe a film, I'm not trying to be pretentious, but I'm trying to express that there is emotional heft and weight to it. So when you combine that with grand scale and epic vistas, Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1 fits the bill. It is cinema at its highest level. Going into it, I already know I like a good Western. I love the myth of the American West and all of the trappings within it. I took a course recently when I finally got my bachelor's degree, Myths of the American West. And we talked a lot about the fiction of the West and the reality of it. As the West was being built, this myth was being sold to get people to go populate the West. We see a little bit of that in this movie. And I don't want to give too much away. I don't think there's a lot of people out there right now that are looking at that going, I can't wait to get to the cinema to go see that. The box office numbers are not great. The American appetite for Westerns has really not been big for a long time. But what I would say is that there's an audience out there for a game like Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2. Both those games were hits with an audience that you don't presume are your average Western viewing public. Look at Longmire. Longmire was picked up by Netflix and ran in like an additional 4 seasons. Look at Yellowstone. It's been a massive hit. Taylor Sheridan is riding a wave of success with Yellowstone. There is an audience there, and I think there was enough people curious about what Costner was doing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna check that out. But I think there's also a lot of people going, I can't really justify spending the money. And I didn't even hit record. I think there's enough of the viewing going public. There's enough of the viewing public that don't want to go out and spend the money in a theater. And I totally get that. There's been a lot of movies that I was just like, I'll just see that on streaming when it comes out. And I think our culture now, with the streaming services the way that they are, I think there's a lot of people that are like, I'll just go see that when it comes to whatever service it comes to. But I highly encourage you, go see this movie. Go see it in the theater. Go see it at a matinee in the middle of the day. Have a good lunch. Go in there. Don't spend all the money on concessions. Go to support what people are calling this ambitious endeavor on the part of Kevin Costner. This is a lot like George Lucas. He made so much off of Star Wars that he was able to basically self-finance The Empire Strikes Back. But he wasn't going to break even unless Empire Strikes Back was a hit. Kevin Costner put up, $38 million of his own money to finance this. This is a man who loves movies, who loves making movies. He's given us some of the greatest movies some of the greatest experiences that we've had in the cinema for decades. You know, he was in Bull Durham, and he gave us Field of Dreams, and, you know, you can make fun of him all you want, but Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was an absolute monster blockbuster hit in 1991. Dances with Wolves was an Academy Award winner. And as much as we sit there and complain about how bad movies are right now, about how we're so tired of retreads, how we're so tired of sequels, here's a guy going out on a limb from his own bank account to give the movie-going public something fresh, something different. Some of the criticism has been that nothing happens in this movie. There is plenty that happens. There is plenty that the protagonists of each segment of the story do. Now, it does not center on any one single protagonist, and you get to see the experiences of multiple characters. You get to see things through their eyes. And each of the characters has a full arc of growth from one place to another, even though the story's just beginning. This isn't an action-packed, shoot-'em-up sort of Western. There are parts of it that are that. And none of it is viewed with a, huzzah, whip out your guns and start blasting. Every time someone uses a firearm or uses a bow and arrow, you understand what's at stake there. Even when they choose not to use their guns, it's not frivolous. So there's a lot of tension. And no, there's not a lot of action. It doesn't move really super fast. But I was never for a minute bored. And you might think 3 hours, that's a really long time for a movie. Yeah, it is. But they're worth the time spent to get this story told. I really recommend that you see it for yourself. That you see it in a theater. You see it on the big screen. It's so well shot. The music is so well done by John Debney. The sound design is incredible. The sound never overwhelms the dialogue. The music never overwhelms the dialogue. You hear everything crystal clear. It's so good. Given the clarity of the visuals and the clarity of the sound design, it's one of the best movie watching experiences you'll ever see. There's not enough good I can say about the quality of the craftsmanship. Costner does something I think that a lot of people don't do. He trusts the audience to see what he's doing, to know where we're at, and to follow along. There is no hand-holding. I've seen some people have some, it's kind of hard to follow. No, it's not. The movie doesn't move that fast, right? You can't first say, man, this movie, nothing happens, and it's too long, and then say, I can't follow it. That's not a thing. That doesn't work. And this is why it's important to watch this in a theater, because you got your phone. If you got your phone put away and you have to pay attention, you can't help but follow along. It's really not that hard. It's not like people talking in rooms, okay? It's not boring. It's not boring. And it is extremely emotional. These are good actors delivering great performances, emotional performances, sometimes without words. The design of the plot, the design of what happens to the characters, the designs of those journeys are what I'm talking about when it comes to great writing. A lot of times people think dialogue when you think writing, and there is good dialogue in it. Costner has sometimes been criticized for being a little too into himself. But this movie, you don't get that at all. For his part, he doesn't have a whole lot of lines. He has a little bit of the action, but not all of it. The fact that he doesn't lead off the film, you don't see him for a good ways into the movie. A lot of care has been put into this. It's not your typical summer popcorn flick that you go watch. It's got some heft, but it's got some humor, and it's got some love, and it's got some tragedy, and it's got everything that you would ever want out of a movie. Go and see it for yourself. For the love of Pete, go see this in the movies. Go see this in the cinema, on a big screen, with the big sound, because the sound design is way too good to miss. A lot of people say see it on the big screen because of the visuals. See it on the big screen because of the sound. and the music, and see if you aren't captivated by this story. Give it a chance. Give it a good, honest chance. Don't go and go, I hate Westerns. Well, you know what? You can learn to love a Western, just like you can learn to love anything. And I love this movie. I can't say enough about it, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and watch it again. That's my thoughts on Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1.